my first waking conscious moment that I remember was probably about 3 days later. So I was admitted on the 16th. I think I was hit on the 16th. It was a Sunday. Sometime around Wednesday or Thursday, I'd already had surgery. I mean, they did my leg right away. They did my face, and then my back was coming up on like Thursday morning. And that morning that I woke up, there was a group of men that surrounded my bed that were from my home group in AA. And they were there bringing a meeting to me, bringing support to me. And I can't explain what came out of my mouth other than I asked everybody to pray for the driver. And I was so adamant about, regardless of what had happened, because here I am being told, like, they never caught this guy, we're looking for him. I mean, we're rattling our sabers trying to find this guy, right? I mean, and of course, I'm in just so much gratitude that people are out there on my behalf. But I had no interest in it, and I can't explain why. And all I felt was just a deep sense of compassion, because I just felt like there is nothing that I can say or do. I can't remember anything. And of course, all of, Kelly's recollection was as the best that he could and what he could see. And so all I could do was just ask for forgiveness of this person. And it blew some people away. And I don't know where it came from.
That was John Abate, and this is the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 91 of the YTP. We have a kickin' show for you today. Let's see. Yup, we go deep again. Just like last week, we dive in full on with John as he shares his story of recovery in more ways than one, his journey to mindfulness and meditation, and his dominating curiosity of how these ancient practices can enhance athletic performance and the lives of athletes everywhere. We got great feedback on last week's show with BJ and I. So if you enjoyed that, you are going to be flying high as we dig in and go off the rails with a fierce competitor today. I can't wait to share the show with you. But first, I have to tell you that the YTP is sponsored by Health IQ, a life insurance agency that uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people, including runners, cyclists, yogis, vegans, and more. 56% of Health IQ customers save between 4 and 33% on their life insurance. We always say do the work for the sake of the work and not for the reward, but that's not to say if there is something good for us in the end that we should walk away. Go to healthiq.com/YTP to support the show and see if you qualify. You guys, thank you so much for your support of the show. Yogi Triathlete Holistic Performance is who we are, and this podcast is an extension of our mission to create a better world. Combining high-level athletics with mindfulness, meditation, plant-based nutrition, and the physical practice of yoga, we have athletes all over the world living this awake and ready life and changing the face of athleticism. Don't fret. You don't have to be all in or pre-qualify to work with us. If any of this interests you or you just want to get faster, then join the tribe. Our team is growing and we're accepting new athletes now. Thank you, everyone who has purchased the Yogi Triathlete Cookbook. We're getting incredible feedback on this book, and it's just amazing to see that the inspiration that came to me has been fulfilled with all of its intention. We've received so many comments and emails about the book, but the best one so far was at a book signing when a woman walked up to me and told me it was the first reasonable cookbook she's ever owned. She said that she started reading it and was like, yeah, okay, I get these people because they get me and I can do these recipes. So if you're digging the book, you guys, please leave a review on Amazon. We've got a few up there, but we would love a few hundred more because we know this book is worthy. Also, keep posting your photos and hashtagging Yogi Triathlete Cookbook. I saw a great one the other day from USAT President Barry Siff. Him and his wife, Jody, are all in on the plant-based train, and he was one of the amazing people that reviewed and supplied a blurb of support for the book. I mean, USAT President, you guys, I cannot imagine a better cookbook for athletes. There's so much momentum happening right now at Yogi Triathlete, and we are signing on with new partners that we believe in. So you'll be hearing about more of those in the future. Our athletes are getting access to great discounts on gear from our team sponsors and companies that we believe in and use. One of those new partners is Thrive Market. We signed up with Thrive when we moved here to California, and it's a great place to buy the bulk of your groceries at a seriously discounted rate. The top organic and healthy products at wholesale prices, 25 to 50% off, and they ship straight to your door. The best thing about Thrive, though, besides the massive savings, is that with every membership that's purchased, they give one to a low-income family, veteran, or teacher. What an easy way to be in service, you guys, in service of others while filling up your superfood stockpile. Go to the blog post in this episode and use the banner ad to get a 30-day risk-free trial. Absolutely no cost to save you a ton. Another company that we love so much is Joe Bars, and today's guest, John Abate, is partners in this incredibly delicious bar company with YTP guest Jess Sarah from episode 78. If you haven't listened to our convo with Jess, go back and have a listen for sure. Her story is super powerful. It's so awesome to hear in this podcast that Joe entered into 2018 with tons of gusto. And it's no wonder with these two super vibe athletes at the wheel and John heading up the business end of things, applying his mindfulness techniques to how he's growing the business. He shares a little bit about that and how it's affecting his professional life in our talk today. John is a total badass. Why? Not only is he a Cat 1 cyclist and a successful business owner who survived a near-death experience just a few years ago, he is living his life now through the lens of mindfulness and meditation. His curiosity is at an all-time high around the subject of consciousness, and although he repeatedly says that he's no expert, he's an extreme wealth of information and offers a depth to this conversation that is rare to come by. He shares his story today and his unhealthy relationship with substance. He talks about recovery, and he revealed to us prior to the podcast that it's the first time he's talking about it publicly. He goes into detail about the horrific accident that almost took his life, and we are so extremely honored to be the messengers for his expression to be released into the world. John is a super special guy. He is the definition of someone who is tapping into their inner badass, and so without a moment longer, I give to you Joe Bar fanatic, master pro cyclist, and guru, John Abate. Let's get this party started. Yes. You're going to talk about sweet cycling in San Diego. Yeah. Where did you go?
I rode from Lucadia to Torrey Pines and then did my 3 repeats. Felt like a champ after the new year and back home.
That hill.
Oh, I know.
It's like 2 miles, just enough, right?
It's just the perfect amount.
Yeah.
Inside or outside? What do you prefer?
What do you mean?
Inside the park or outside?
Oh, I just do it right on the road.
Yeah.
I haven't done it inside.
So the inside's good. It's a little steeper, a little shorter, but you can't ride back down. So you've got to ride across and then you come back down the road. Down Torrey Pines Road.
All right. I'm going to have to check that out.
Check that out.
I just go right for I get on the arrow up one time, then come down, and then I crank it out seated. Then I come down. I just repeat arrow seated.
I'll bet you and I passed each other so many times. And haven't we met on the bike? I don't think or any of the group rides.
I don't think so because I'm always on my TT bike. It's the only thing I have.
Wednesday Worlds.
So I don't see. I can't ride as many packs because
that's true.
Roadies,
Yeah,
I just don't want to
We get in the way.
So I venture off on my own. But one day I'll come back to road cycling.
Yeah.
Go right now. Committed.
Yep.
So yeah, good ride this morning?
It was good. Yeah. It felt good. I have been low motivation. Yeah, I've been low motivation since the holidays.
Well, hasn't it been... I guess it's been a little sunny because I was going to say, it was gray there for a while.
Yeah.
It was gray for 2 days.
We get to complain about 2 days of rain.
I know.
And
you know what?
The rest
Let's
of the country
just lay
hates
it on.
us.
Let's lay it on right now.
Yeah.
It rained on Monday and Tuesday. It was brutal.
And it was windy and it was below probably 60 degrees.
It was awful. Oof. I was dressed up I was gonna run on the tundra. I almost gave Clark a haircut and sewed it onto my jacket. I was so cold. No, but that's why we live out here.
Yeah.
Are you originally from here?
No, I grew up in Connecticut.
Oh, I love it. So many New Englanders out here.
Yeah, and you're Rhode Island?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Cape Cod.
Okay.
And Beach grew up in Westport.
Nice.
Mass.
Yep.
Yeah, and then most recently we lived in Newport, Rhode Island, which if you live in Connecticut, then you know Newport.
Rhode Island is probably my favorite place outside of San Diego. I love Rhode Island. I love it.
It's so beautiful. It's just that winter is like killer.
Newport, Narragansett,
Oh yeah.
of course, Block, Nantucket. Nantucket's Mass, but yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I'm an East Coast boy at heart, no doubt.
I know, but
about
there's
it.
so many East Coasters out here.
Yeah.
It's just really fun.
Well, it makes sense. You know, we're all packing up, and we leave the ice scrapers and the
Yeah.
and the you know.
we were the
all
ones that were
behind.
like, I have no interest in digging my heels in.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I'm done. I'm done. I had this Facebook memory the other day of me. It was like a selfie of me, and it said, "Oh, this is my first 2-pant, 4-shirt, balaclava, ski glove run of the season." And I was like, "Oh, that's horrible." I
Imagine.
remember that run too.
Yeah.
I remember my shoulder being sore, like from January until March, trying to like get the door open in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Because it would be frozen. Like the house
Trying
would
to-
be frozen shut.
Trying to push all the snow from behind, you know, like out of the
Oh
way.
my God. Yeah.
Can you
And then
imagine just like
if you-
making your way out the front door with just snow, like, you know, and if you were lucky enough to have a snowblower or a neighbor that had one, the path would be cleared, but otherwise you're just totally socked in.
You know
Yeah.
what? And that's the thing about New Englanders. Like, if they've got a snowblower and the neighbor doesn't, they're going to go over and they're going to blow that person's driveway
Oh, yeah.
for them. They're
Yeah.
just such beautiful, giving, wonderful people
Absolutely.
that you don't want to get into a bar fight with.
Yeah, that's true. For sure. Yeah.
So, what brought you out here to San Diego?
So, let's see. I left Connecticut after high school, made my way to Colorado.
Yep, that's what we did.
Yep. Fort Collins, Colorado State. Left there a year after I graduated in 96, moved up to the mountains for a year, and then left there in 97. A stint back east, a stint abroad, came back to San Francisco in 98, came down here to visit in 99 and was hooked. And San Fran was just a fleeting moment for me. I spent it a year up in San Francisco. Now, this is 98 or 99 when we had the really bad El Nino. So this was like months of just driving rain every day. And I worked as a bike messenger. So you can imagine I was ready to get the hell out of town.
Yeah.
I just was kind of fumbling around and needed a job. And so started with a hand-me-down bike and started working as a messenger.
There's some hills in San Francisco.
You think?
Like, the pitch is insane
Yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Running
Just-
and walking.
That's
Like going-
a killer workout.
Like just going from like downtown financial district to the top of California Street is brutal, brutal. And then it's raining. I'm just like, what the hell am I thinking?
Yeah.
What was the onus of, you know, this? But it was an amazing experience.
San
And I wasn't
Francisco's-
road cycling at the time. Was not a roadie. Was more like coming from like the mountain bike world. So I had a hybrid mountain bike with slick tires, and I got hit in the financial district. So my company sued the driver because he was uninsured and ran a red light. So I got a new bike and had a relatively like crash-free winter. But then in the spring, I got car doored on Market Street and got sent to the hospital. And I was thinking to myself, okay, this is not the path or the career that I'm ready for. Although I thought it was pretty cool doing it.
Yeah, we would call that resistance. Like, you know, you try and do something, it's just not working out. It's like,
It's
all right,
not.
I need to pause.
It's not.
And I need to just, does this feel right?
Yeah, and I really wanted it to because it was really like a hip, cool job to have. You know, you were considered kind of like the counterculture of cyclists, and it was just an amazing time. It was an amazing experience, but one that I would highly not recommend unless you're like early 20s. You can bounce off the street, get back at it quickly,
Yeah.
and call it. Yeah,
Well, being a mountain biker, that's like perfect training for that kind of thing.
absolutely.
Because it's just red line, and then
And bike handling.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I love San Fran.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a little time up there when we were searching for our home, but it was too cold.
Yeah.
It was too cold. But I love it. It felt to me, and not everybody agrees with this, it felt to me like the New York City of the West. It was just such a, they're different cities, but just it's just got such a grand nature to it. It's got a lot of energy up there, a
Yes.
lot of power.
Yes.
The architecture, of course, is just magnificent.
Yes.
The landscape is gorgeous. The parks. I mean, I just loved how powerful it felt.
There is a great feel up there, and I agree with you. The energy does feel powerful. There's something expansive, I think, just about being in the West as compared to the East.
Oh, absolutely.
So when you're at back East, it feels more enclosed. The streets are smaller. There's a lot more trees. It's just less vast. When you get out to the West, and as I did when I moved from Colorado, of course, being vast, to San Francisco, I still felt that, especially being by the ocean. I've always felt like San Francisco was a great city of neighborhoods, as opposed to New York, which is just Gotham, like a metropolis, So, I mean, I feel like there are some similarities, but I get what you're saying about
like there's
this.
a lot of individuality to them
There really
as well.
is. Yeah, it's super creative.
The different districts.
Where did we
We were staying in the Richmond district.
Richmond's great, so that's the outer area.
Yeah, right
I
up.
lived in the Mission.
Okay.
Yeah.
We went to
Okay.
dinner down there, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we had a friend in the Mission.
Yeah.
But it was, we had a lot of fun, and we were right near Golden Gate Park, so
pretty.
great
So
running
pretty.
in there, and Buffalo, and so we agree on the whole San Diego thing, because San Diego just has this like chill feel to it.
Yeah.
And even I've got a friend up in Orange County that I go up to see often. And even when I cross over to Orange County, I just feel that energy change. And of course, I'm pretty sensitive to energy, but there's something about San Diego, and I'm sure it's the match. It's the energy match that felt really good to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we've got the North County and the sleepy little beach towns, and you get down to the city. I'm using air quotes here. And so it does feel a bit like we're outside of the bubble. And I feel like I can get a little bit of culture, but if I were to have anything, I would keep it back up here in North County for me, because I feel the energy living in Encinitas and, and having all this.
I love Encinitas.
Yeah,
I love that whole area. We tried to live there.
Yeah.
We
Just
tried,
wasn't working out.
and we put it out there, and we were totally unattached.
Yep.
We were just like, all right, let's just put it out there. We kept putting it out there, and it just didn't come back. And then this little place that we're sitting in now, just reached out and grabbed us.
I wouldn't trade it. You got a great little spot here.
Yeah, and within 24 hours, we were like, all right. And nothing on paper made sense that we should be able to live here. We didn't really have any income. We had a little bit. We had a couple athletes and stuff, but nothing. That's flow, right? That's flow.
Yeah.
Like when things in life happen that, if you were to write it down on paper, it'd be like, no way, we're not going to give this place to these people.
Yeah,
and it was
right.
like the woman was like possessed. She was like, so when do you want to move in? I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, tomorrow. Before you really take a good look at things.
Yeah, then you're just like, let's look at the place one more time. She really wants us in here bad. What is she hiding?
You heard that we're living out of our car, right? So I love it here. So you've been here for how long?
Since 99.
Oh, wow.
18 years, 19,
Oh, wow.
18,
Okay.
19 years. Yeah, this is home. Family's all on the East Coast. So I get back as much as I can because, like I said, I'm still an East Coast boy at heart.
you don't lose that.
You don't.
No, I love it though.
This is home, but this is home. Yeah.
I love it. Who were just talking to somebody about that, like the East Coast, and it's like, I can I hang with it, and then if I need it, I know I can pull it out.
Yeah.
If push comes to shove, nobody's gonna mess with me.
It sounds like no lack of confidence on that side of whoever you were talking to. I like that. I'm going to use that one next time.
So how did cycling come in? Besides being like in one of the cycling capitals.
Yeah. No, I think just through osmosis, just seeing everyone out on the roads and looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I'm probably 20, 25 pounds overweight, was drinking a lot, just kind of just not in a good place in my life. And so I had the messenger bike in the garage, dusted it off, and just started riding from Oceanside. At the time, I lived in Oceanside. And I would just get on the bike path, avoid the 76, get on the bike path down to Carlsbad, and I'd turn around. And then the next ride, I'd ride down to Encinitas, turn around. And then I thought, Oceanside to Cardiff, it might as well have been like a grand tour stage. It felt huge to me. And of course, I'd go home and just eat everything that I could find, thinking like, oh my goodness, this is huge. But it just kept evolving, and I joined a local club, and they had a race team, and I decided I'd give it a shot. So this is going back to 2011. So in 11, I did my first race, just one race that year. And then 2012, I just jumped right in, started as a Cat 5, worked my way up to like a 2 in a season. And then I got my Cat 1. There was a local pro team here in town that said, get your Cat 1 racing license and you can join the team. And I was off and running. And so then I spent a little bit of time just, kind of riding as a support rider for I had found cycling older. I was definitely beyond the prime of a road cyclist, or I think I was maybe in my early 30s, maybe 33, 34 when I found it. So right out of the chute, I was already a fast master, and so I did the category racing and had some fun doing the elite Cat 1 stuff, and then jumped in and started racing masters, which might as well be like pro racing in some respects.
Those guys are still solid,
Still,
and fast,
yeah,
and strong.
Yeah. We like to term the coin master pro. It's like you just won't give it up. But it's still fun and it's super competitive. Yeah.
Who do you ride? Do you ride still on a team now?
I do. The team was formerly called Surf City Cyclery. And so they've changed since the last season or so. They've changed the name to Methods to Winning. So there's 2 individuals on the team now that are the team captains, well-known criterium racers, Rasan Bahati and Sharon Smith. And so they formed a company or LLC or an organization called Methods to Winning. And it's the idea behind it, and I hope I'm doing this justice, but the idea behind it is to bring cycling to the inner city, to youth, to develop. So we brought 4 or 5 U25, under 25 riders onto our team. And so we've been predominantly known as an elite/masters team. So now we've got this great group of under 25 riders that we can work with, mentor, so that they can have their shot, in going pro. So it's going to be a fantastic year. There's going to be a lot of motivation for us to race, not only for the team, but also for the younger guys, showing them how to, just what it takes to be a part of a team and what it takes to win and what all the things that go into the aspect of team racing. So, and there's enough experience on our team. I mean, there's probably 8 or 10 of us that have been racing for, most of the guys have been racing for, over a decade or more. So it's going to be exciting.
I think that's so valuable. Yeah. We've had some young athletes, really talented athletes on this podcast. And I think, being in my mid 40s, you get wisdom, you know, and I know that we have people in their 50s and their 60s that listen to this and they're probably giggling because they know that even more is coming.
Just you wait.
But man, when I was like the age of some of these young athletes that we've had, first of all, I was I was in like a leotard and a thong and I was like kicking people out of the front row in aerobics. I was not like a team player at all, let alone an elite athlete. Yeah. But just the wisdom of everything that you were talking about. And I think everything that you were just talking about, if you were to list it all, the physical would be kind of a small piece of that.
Sure
it's like
is.
Working as a team. What does it take to win? Yeah, it's the physical, but it's so much more than the physical. And what a great opportunity that these guys have to learn from you.
Yeah, the team dynamic is it plays such a huge role in success, and it's often said, especially in road cycling. We couldn't say this for triathlon, but certainly in road cycling, that the strongest man or woman in the peloton or in the bunch does not win the bike race. It comes down to, of course, a lot of things, tactics, how your team's working, what the plan is. Are you racing to the plan? Will you execute the plan? Just staying on track of a plan and not, it's good to be able to have a few, cards up your sleeve, so to speak, and we can do that in road cycling. But for the most part, if you have a plan, you race to it. And if you don't win and you race to the plan, then you still succeeded because you've executed. And there's so many other things that can go wrong in a bike race. So these are things that we hope to bring to them.
Execution is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And we look at that a lot with our athletes and, going over their races afterwards. BJ and I will talk about them and then BJ talks to his athletes about them. But looking at that execution, the swim to the bike to the run. And it's always like you want to finish that run so strong. And it doesn't matter what the finish time is. It's like, how did that day progress for you? Yep. Did you blow it out on the swim? Because we've seen that, which seems seemingly impossible, but we've seen it before. You just blow it out on the swim, and then the
so
bike,
behind.
and then
Or
and
blow
then
it out more so on the bike. Like I'm a cyclist,
of course.
so I'm gonna go as hard as I can, and then we'll get on the run, and I'll keep my lead. And it doesn't work.
Well, it's a commitment. It's just having that commitment. I think is more than anything, and understanding that it's a sum of all its parts, right? And so, and that can be in your sport, in our sport, et cetera. So,
And being able to hold back when you are supposed to hold back.
Tell any athlete to hold back.
Oh my God, it's
it's
so
a tough one.
huge.
Yeah.
It's so huge. So, and I know that, I mean, I'm so like on the brink of just diving into the mindfulness thing, but I want to back it up a little bit.
Sure.
You're living in Oceanside and you're riding your commuter bike, and Cardiff feels like a million miles away.
Right.
You're not in a good space, but now you move into cycling, and now all of a sudden you're Cat 1. So I'm going to make the assumption that something happened between Oceanside and you racing Cat 1 on this team, that, with your lifestyle habits changed.
Yeah. So ironically, my lifestyle habits never really changed during this time. I was able to kind of manage. I loved to party, loved drinking.
Oh, I get you, man.
I mean, it was like I couldn't ride enough miles to burn enough calories so that I could pack full of IPAs afterwards.
Oh, IPA is my favorite.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we live in the IPA capital of the world, of course, now. And so, but this is going back a few years. So I did have this period of time where I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. But it took several years to realize that I was straddling this precipice of, let's just say, the control was being lost, and I'm all about control. I've always been that way, and that's my ego, right? And so I got sober, and that happened just a little over 2.5 years ago. So there was a long period of time where, the business never suffered. I want to say that the racing never suffered. I was a master at just kind of controlling, but it was chaos out of control, in my mind, in the way that I had thought about myself and my relationships and things like this. And I let alcohol be sort of that buffer between actually just feeling the feelings, and just living. You wear a mask, you're out there just, kind of winging it, doing the best you can. And at the end of the day, it's just a turn of the dial, either left or right, in the right way. And for me, that turn of the dial was finding AA and getting sober. And so that happened. Yeah, it happened about 2.5 years ago, a little less than that.
And I think that our awareness, as somebody who's definitely used substances to a point where I wore the mask, there was a lot going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
I was a master at keeping the storefront nice and clean.
I like that. Keeping the storefront nice and clean.
Yeah,
Sure.
you would want to window shop at that store, but you wouldn't want to go in the storeroom.
Yeah, inventory scattered everywhere. Can't find a sales clerk.
Stealing from myself.
Yeah.
And it was years of the awareness that I knew there was another way, but I hadn't hit the exhaustion of like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I hadn't hit that exhaustion yet.
Yeah.
And so I think we've been talking a lot about this lately, this idea of like exhausting a path, exhausting a behavior pattern. Even if we know it's not in our highest good, but exhausting it until we gain enough clarity of saying, I'm done. Like, we've done so many podcasts in the last 2 weeks. I was just talking to someone about like, you get backed into a corner. I can't remember. Maybe that might have been in a dream last night. Yeah. But you get yourself into, at least I felt like I was just in a corner, and I was like, all right, I can't backpedal anymore. Yeah. It's time to move forward. Yeah. For me, it was mindfulness and meditation that just started to raise my vibration, where all of that, it fell away just so naturally, like smoking pot and drinking, and never doing any of it to a point where anybody would say you have a problem. But again, there was a lot going on behind the scenes that was very, very dysfunctional and unhealthy.
That's right.
Yeah, that probably BJ doesn't even know about.
Well, and I think too, I mean, I like the metaphor of being backed into a corner, but for me, so you look at the 12 steps of AA, and for me, I like to say that there's step 0, and I actually heard this in a meeting once. There was a very wise elderly woman, and she was probably in her late 70s, early 80s, and for what she had said was, for her, she got to step 0, which this shit has to stop. And I really related to that. You know, I mean, yeah, on the surface, I mean, everything seemed to A-okay. And I've actually had some friends that have said, really? Like, I know you like to party a little bit and drink, but really? So I think it's just all in relation to how we feel about ourselves on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. I mean, let alone you put anything inside your system. I mean, even just living cleanly, you're living a life of this constant reverberation of thought, feeling, and emotion. I mean, sit quietly for, I challenge you to sit quietly for 10 minutes without mindfulness and just, see where it takes you. And we live in this kind of default mode network where we're continuing to just think and think and think. And now you put substance into the mix and, you can create quite the storm. So, yeah, so that's where I got to. I mean, and through the path of recovery, which for me was absolutely key in healing from an accident that I had back in August of 2016. But it also got me down a path of actually creating a consciousness with a higher power, which opens up spirituality, which opens up more of the ability to see myself in every moment. And what does that mean for me? And how do I get there? And for me, I've learned that getting there is through prayer and meditation, heavily on the meditation, and almost, I think the two can be synonymous with, if I am sending out kindness and love through metta, it's saying a prayer. I'm saying a prayer for someone, and so I don't have to speak to a God or some type of deity in order to do that. So, but we can get into all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's the opportunity, though, because we keep coming across these changes in people, and the changes happen because of pain or loss or something extremely devastating in someone's life, and then we change.
Right.
But now what I'm seeing is we have the tools, and you have the tools now to help these people even before they get to that point.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, if we're living our happiest moments, we're not thinking about how am I going to change this? We're going to stay right where we are, to your point. It takes something, I feel like, for me, it took something of this is enough. I'm just looking at patterns in my life. I'm looking at, of course, just discursive thought, not feeling as though what my true nature should be and the real John, and living, mindfully and speaking from the heart and telling the truth and doing all these things that just the human condition sometimes doesn't allow us to do without looking at it. So I'm reminded of that through the program, and that helps you a good deal in just keeping things together, and then that can lead you down the path of mindfulness and meditation. I like to do my yoga. I like to find myself meditating if I'm walking or if I'm on the bike or if I'm backpacking,
It just gets to be like, that's where I want to be.
That's where I want to be.
That's where I want to be.
I choose.
Like
to be
when
there.
I'm out,
do.
when I'm out running and we just got back from doing hill repeats and running hard up a hill and being able to touch that foundation of calm that lies beneath all the chaos as I'm pushing my body so hard and just feeling like I'm like a step back watching it all.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing position to have developed and knowing, and I know so well that it's within all of us and we all have this ability, but it's a practice, as you know.
Yeah.
So I want to back up again. So you're cycling and you had mentioned an accident, and I believe that Sarah, you're very, very good. I call you guys soulmates. Mm-hmm. You're definitely soul partners in this life, and you're her partner in Jojay.
That's right.
So we'll talk a little bit about where Jojay is. I want to touch upon that too. But she had mentioned that you were in a pretty serious bike accident, and I'm assuming that's the one you're talking about.
I was, yeah. I was hit on the bike, in the bike lane, by a car back in August of 2016. And I was riding with a friend of mine, If it weren't for him, I don't know that I'd be here today. So, I'll give you the bullet points of the accident, so we can have some frame of reference for where I came from, because I think it's important as we talk more about mindfulness and pain and trauma and things like that, physical. So I was hit from behind on Leucadia Boulevard up at the top of the hill by Quail Gardens Road. They suspect he was driving somewhere between 50 and 60 miles an hour.
Which is extremely fast for that road.
Very fast for any of the secondary streets in Encinitas, anywhere, I would imagine. I was thrown from the bike about 40, 45 feet from the bike. When I landed, I broke just about everything. I shattered my leg, I broke my back, just completely just out. So by the time my friend Kelly got to me, I think he thought I was dead. I was completely unconscious, full of blood. My face, I broke some bones in my face, and so of course I looked like a mess. Had a compound leg fracture, so my bone's sticking out of my leg. The poor guy, he's looking at me, and so in all of that, he's trying to corral the driver, because the driver had basically stopped about 150 yards down the hill. So I was hit basically at the apex or the top of the hill, and so he had stopped. Kelly's trying to wave him on to come by and help, and he took off. So the driver left. It was a hit and run.
He had that moment.
He had that moment
when he stopped.
He had that opportunity.
He or she, we don't know, right?
It was a he, because he did identify.
Like he had a moment.
Yep.
That was a life.
Yeah.
That's a heavy burden.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it ends. So
yeah.
Whew, that's a.
Yeah. So
Yikes.
spent about, I think, 7 days in the ER. Had been, was sent to Scripps in La Jolla, then moved on to Kaiser facility, and had a series of operations. Had my spine fused. I'm fused from T12 to L3, so I have 5 levels of the spine that are fused. I had a leg, a rod put in for my tib-fib fracture, so I have a rod in there. And then just ribs. I lacerated my liver. I had internal bleeding. I had 3 different surgeons working on me, not all at the same time in unison, but it was kind of interesting, because in some way, shape, or form, I think I was judging each one of their bedside manner, and it was like, well, this one's pretty good. Well, this one's even better. By the time the neurologist got to me, he was just like, okay, we are going to totally fix you up. And thank goodness you're in such great shape, because I was just getting ready to go back east and do a stage race in Vermont. And so, that in and of itself is the benefit of staying healthy and staying strong. Every single doctor and nurse that I spoke to in the time that I was in the hospital had said, hey, without the physical fitness that you're in, we don't know how you would have survived this. The trauma was so much.
When you were hit, do you remember when you landed or were laying?
Yeah, I don't have any recollection of any of the accident other than what I think might have been a fleeting moment of impact. So I don't really know if that's even if that's even a conscious thought that I have in memory, or something that I may have just thought.
Yeah, okay,
what it must have been like. But I do remember I was in mid-sentence. Kelly tells me I was in mid-sentence. We were just talking about how beautiful the golf course is with all the dew on the grass and the lake, and the sun was up, and it was a clear day, and it was just like, you were mid-sentence. He said it was so eerie. And then you were shot out of a cannon, is kind of how he had said it. And he's telling me this in the hospital, And so I'm recounting the accident through the eyes of another person, And so you can imagine I'm trying to put things together. And so
it's in your subconscious, though. The subconscious records it all.
It does. It's there.
So I think those fleeting, that glimpse or whatever you're getting is definitely
it's part of
in there. But
unlocking that.
Man,
Yeah.
that is the nervous system at its best right there, just shutting off like those, because when it gets too much, our body will protect us in that way.
It shuts it down.
Yeah,
it shuts
it's
it down
so
from
amazing.
just trauma and pain and everything like that. What has led me to a lot of what we'll talk about was my first waking conscious moment that I remember was probably about 3 days later. So I was admitted on the 16th. I think I was hit on the 16th. It was a Sunday. sometime around Wednesday or Thursday, I'd already had surgery. I mean, they did my leg right away. They did my face, and then my back was coming up on like Thursday morning. And that morning that I woke up, there was a group of men that surrounded my bed that were from my home group in AA. And they were there bringing a meeting to me, bringing support to me. And I can't explain what came out of my mouth other than I asked everybody to pray for the driver. And I was so adamant about, regardless of what had happened, because here I am being told, like, they never caught this guy. We're looking for him. I mean, we're rattling our sabers trying to find this guy, right? I mean, and of course, I mean, just so much gratitude that people are out there on my behalf. But I had no interest in it. And I can't explain why. And all I felt was just a deep sense of compassion, because I just felt like there is nothing that I can say or do. I can't remember anything. And of course, all of, Kelly's recollection was as the best that he could and what he could see. And so all I could do was just ask for forgiveness of this person. And it blew some people away. And I don't know where it came from. I mean, you can't just say, well, you're just a nice guy, John. I mean,
no,
I had
that came from something that came from you, like who you truly are.
I think it came from, I mean, understanding that forgiveness is the path to less suffering. And so a lot of this sounds, I mean, it sounds very, existential or metaphysical. I mean, I can't explain it other than it set me down a path that I think has truly changed my life in the way that I look at things and my relationships and people and what it means to be compassionate. What does it mean to have empathy? Yeah.
So you were already in the program at this point.
I was in the program.
And I've never been to AA, but it's from what I know of it has a spirituality angle to it.
Absolutely.
And here you are already being introduced to it.
That's right.
You have this traumatic experience.
Mm-hmm.
You come out of it praying for forgiveness for the driver, for not only for yourself, but everyone around you, because you know that people are angry that this happened.
Right.
And so there's a lot of power in that collective.
Yeah.
And in forgiveness, there's so much healing.
There is.
Like you said, the end of suffering.
Yeah.
So where does it take you next? Because
Yeah.
you have just been jet-setted onto this path.
Yeah. When I got home, couldn't walk for about 6 weeks. Jess took great care of me.
Yeah, let's give Jess Sarah a little shout out.
Jess, she's my
amazing.
absolute angel. I mean, she was the angel on my side. And she knows how extremely grateful I am for her. And it was the experience was. It was tough for the first 6 weeks. I couldn't walk. Putting no pressure on my leg whatsoever. My back, I mean, I was just in a lot of pain, and so pain meds only work for so long, and, you've got to kind of figure out how you're going to deal with the pain. And I remember being very optimistic, very in a place of contentment. I had no fear about the future. I had no dissatisfaction in thinking that I may never ride my bike again, let alone race. I had a very clear idea of where I was going to be. I just needed to figure out how to do it. And so that led me, the moment that I was able to be on my own and start walking, I started meditating deeply and mostly meditating on how I could utilize energy to heal my body. And so let me couch all of these statements by saying I haven't spent years in a cave in Nepal. I haven't gone on long meditation retreats, although I'm getting ready to do my first one, not in a cave in Nepal, but in February I'll do one. I didn't bring a great deal of understanding. I just picked up some books and started reading and looking online, and I'd already been meditating. So to your point, Jess, with AA, it brought that spiritual component of prayer and meditation into my life. And I have, again, a deep sense of gratitude for the program and the people in the program. And so I started going to Swami's, so to SRF, to the meditation gardens.
Oh my God. It's so magic.
beautiful
I mean,
there.
Yeah.
it's hard when I finish a meditation there, it's hard for me to like move because
Yeah.
the grounds are so powerful.
They really
They're
are.
so energetic.
There's
there.
some energy there. There really is some energy there. So if anyone's not familiar with what we're talking about the Self-Realization Fellowship in Encinitas, founded by Paramahansa Yogananda in the 30s. His ashram is there. You can visit. It's free. It's open to the public Tuesday through Sunday, 9 to 5. Please do not speak while you're in there. Speak with a soft voice, because that tries my patience and tolerance. If I find you there speaking out loud, you're going to see the other side of the... No. But anyway, so that's where I was. And, as you know, when you walk into the gardens, you've got this long series of steps. And so every time I'd go, I'd be able to take another step. I mean, that proverbial next step, right? And so I'd find that I'd meditate down closer to the grounds on the side benches there, and all the way to when I could get all the way up to the top and be looking out at the ocean. And I didn't miss a day. I mean, I was on disability for 4 months, wasn't working, was able to just focus on mindfulness and healing through meditation, and of course doing all of the things that the doctors and the PTs are telling you to do. I mean, I didn't magically heal. I mean, I still had to do the hard work. But the idea that I could use something innate in all of us, which is just simply sitting quietly, it's as easy as that. I mean, there is no membership card that you need to apply for meditation. There's no doctrines you need to read and be, brought into the fold of the group. No secret handshakes. It's a matter of simply being aware of the thoughts that come into your mind and leave. And that awareness is where you can focus on finding consciousness. And so I started really trying to understand the things about what it is to be conscious, what it is to be mindful. And I had an experience, I just want to backtrack real quick. I had an experience in the hospital, and it's only come to me recently as I've started to learn about consciousness. And I was put under a general anesthesia for all of my operations. But the one that stuck with me the most is when I had my spinal fusion. And when I was fused, I remember going under, but when I came out, I had an experience that I can't explain to you other than it was an incredibly dark, scary, traumatic experience coming out of a general anesthesia. But the idea that you could literally bring the brain level down to a point where you're practically dead and then bring you back to life is an amazing thing, just speaking, of modern science. But I started to think about, well, what were those emotions? I mean, I was kicking and screaming. I didn't know where I was. I had lost all perception of time. And I know that these are just kind of general markers for anesthesia, but it was this experience that I had never, and I have been under anesthesia before, and I didn't have this experience. So it got me thinking about what it is about consciousness, and what is it about our minds and our brains that we can turn the lights on or we can turn the lights off. I mean, to be conscious is simply to know that the lights are on. I mean, if you had to ask, what is consciousness? I mean, it's a phenomenal experience that we have. And I've heard it talked about in a lot of different ways, from physicists to philosophers. And one of my favorite is a physicist. His name is Max Tegmark, if you're familiar with him. And he says that he starts with matter and says that matter is essentially the arrangement of particles, neutrons, atoms, electrons, quarks, and whatever. And if you take an emergent phenomena such as consciousness, and the emergent idea is that it sits above and beyond the substrate or the mind, and that we start to talk about, his theory is that simply it's just a matter of how things are set in patterns. And it's a really interesting way of looking at consciousness. There's nothing to say that we're different than this can, this mug. There's nothing to say that we're different other than the arrangement of the particles in which we live. And he gives an example of what breathes life into a, like, let's say we have a bug, a dead bug. Is there some life force or spirit or gravitas that makes that bug alive or dead? No, it's just the arrangement of particles. And so this idea of consciousness really started to like hold true with me. And I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about the experience of literally like feeling like I was coming back to life. So anyway, a bit discursive there, but I just wanted to kind of like touch on that because it's interesting to me in the experience that I've had. It sent me down a path of starting to think about these things more deeply. And it was important to do that, to understand, because I was hearing like you're healing so quickly, and just the way that you're healing and your mindset. What is it? What are you doing? And I could really only point to one thing, which was just looking inside my mind.
Yeah, you were rearranging the arrangement.
I was rearranging
towards health, is what you were doing. I mean, and this is Einstein's work. Yep. Einstein, a lot of people don't realize, was a master yogi.
Absolutely,
master yogi.
Absolutely.
And this countertop is energy.
This is energy and matter.
This arm is just energy. It's all these different arrangements, different densities.
Yep.
But everything is energy. Yep. And I've just hit this new level because, as you know, you keep hitting new levels.
It's called going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, you hit new levels, like, and all of a sudden they come in, you're like, oh, that's what it means to be present.
Yeah.
Well, I've hit this new level where, I've always looked at, let's say I've looked at a tree as being very abundant for a very long time.
Yep.
I think about the rings, like, within it and how it grows from the inside out.
Well, and that would go along the Buddhist tenets of everything is interconnected in itself.
Yes.
So when you look at a tree, you're actually seeing roots and sunshine and rain.
Yes.
And the insects that feed off of it.
Yeah, and I would look up and I would say, gosh, look at all that abundance, look at all those leaves. Well, now what's happening is that, what I was saying, sometimes I go off the rails.
Yeah.
Now what's happening is that when I see those leaves, I'm seeing a layer underneath that what most people would see as a leaf. I'm now seeing this arrangement of energy and these moving parts. Yeah. And it's really crazy. Yeah. And it's so wild, and I love it. Yeah. Because I'm like, whoa, I just hit a whole new level of consciousness.
Well, then I would send you down the Tegmark rabbit hole, because, I mean, it's really interesting. And so Tegmark, talks about the arrangement of, like I said, it's the pattern of the particles that make the difference. And so that's where consciousness sort of lives. And so he refers back to David Chalmers, who is a philosopher who talks about the easy and the hard problems of consciousness. And so the easy problems of consciousness are simply that we're able to extrapolate information and do math and science, and I can utilize my visual cortex to see you in front of me. The hard problem of consciousness is the subjective idea and the feeling of what it is like and the phenomena of consciousness. And so he posits that the hard problem of consciousness is not simply, I mean, for eons we've been attempting, Plato, and it just goes back for eons that we've been attempting to answer a question that continues to just baffle us. So if you find that you're looking to go down that rabbit hole,
this guy.
You could look at Chalmers and
I'm going to check that out.
And these two correlates.
So I have a question. So you're going up to SRF and you're meditating and you're healing like faster than maybe they had predicted. Yeah. I think people are going to be curious as to like, well, what are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing in those meditations to heal? Yeah. Like, and I love that it just feels very, like it was very organic for you. Like you didn't have like a formal, okay, this is how you heal injury through meditation. So what were you doing in those meditations?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of trial and error, right? So, I mean, I would sit for as long as I could. So, I mean, the idea of meditation, of course, is to simply just sit comfortably where you can experience the least amount of pain. So we don't need to all sit like yogis. For me, if I cross my legs for too long, my knee starts to tweak, my ankle, and these
Totally.
things.
So
You're
not
so propped up.
So oh my God, you should see me. I look like
You have a block under your butt.
Oh my God, I have like a meditation pillow behind my back, one
Yeah.
under my knees.
Yeah.
I'm on 2 pillows, but I found this is a way where I can keep my spine erect.
That's right.
So athlete bodies, like I mean, I actually injured myself sitting in like lotus for a couple years.
Did you really?
And had like ended up with a sartorius injury.
Oh boy.
That I'm on the other side of now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard. So so anyway, go
Yeah,
on. It
yeah.
doesn't have to be like
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to necessarily be playing the part or looking the part, but just sit comfortably, feet on the ground, your hands either at your side, at the fold of your waist and your abdomen, or on your knees, spine erect, your head on an equal axis, not hanging forward or sitting too far back. Just sitting comfortably where you can begin to breathe and breathe naturally. So I like to take a couple of cleansing breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. If anyone does yoga, they'll understand that that's kind of a yogic way of cleansing. And then just simply sitting quietly with the intention of having energy entering at the top of my skull and into my spine through the chakras. And for me, what I would do is just, and I would sit maybe for 5 minutes before, of course, then I would get distracted or, whatever it might be, but I would build up each time more and more, try to just sit for a little longer. But I would just envision clear light, just white light, eyes closed, maybe just not straining the eyes, but just looking up to the third eye and just envisioning white light, healing white light coming in to the top of my skull, down through my spine and into my body. I didn't feel any sensations. I wasn't tingly, anything like this. And it just seemed to be working. I mean, I was just feeling better and better, and I was not so much the physical aspects of it, but also just the conscious aspects that I was seeing, the benefits of just starting to realize that it's okay to look at thoughts as they come into the mind and they leave. I started picturing a blue sky with big white puffy clouds, and those clouds were my thoughts as they came into the mind. The winds of top would take them out of the mind. And that's a nice practice to think about when you're sitting in meditation, is to look at the thoughts. And so it's a common misnomer that we have to sit in meditation with no thought. And that's really not what mindfulness meditation is about. It's about an awareness, a non-judgmental, non-discursive awareness of thoughts. And if you can continue on that path, then you start to see the true gems of meditation, which are the gaps in consciousness. Those moments within your meditation where there's literally just the self drops out. Everything drops out. Buddhists or other contemplatives might say it's enlightenment or, nirvana or whatever you want to call it. But for me, I had to do what felt good to me, and it just felt good. And I can't tell you that mindfulness meditation healed my pain or anything like that. I mean, there's a great book out now called Altered Traits. Daniel Goleman and Richie Davidson, these guys were rubbing elbows with Ram Dass and Timothy Leary back in the 70s at Harvard. And so they wrote this great book that just came out on the healing benefits of meditation. And what they say in the book and the findings were simply that, and this is after years, decades of, they would bring do you know who Matthew Ricard is by any chance? Mm-hmm. So Matthew Ricard is considered one of the most advanced Buddhist monks, and they would bring him in and they would hook up his head to an fMRI, and they would start looking at brain scans and EEGs and all these things. And so what they found was that meditation in itself didn't produce an analgesic effect like taking an aspirin or taking ibuprofen. I can't eliminate the physical pain, but what I can become is aware of the pain. And the awareness of the pain allows me to look as a non-identification of the pain. And I was noticing that before I even read this book or even realized that. And now I'm reading the book and I'm thinking to myself, this just felt right. It just felt like when I was in meditation during that time when I was getting, all healed and fixed up, I told you how I would look at energy and the white light and whatever I could sort of focus on in that sense, but that in and of itself helped me to find those little gaps in consciousness, because now I'm not thinking about, what's for lunch or where am I going to go for my next, meal or whatever it is. It's like, so it was extremely helpful in doing that. And I had to have a traumatic event, I feel like, to be able to go down that path. But I don't think that you necessarily have to have, not everyone needs to have a traumatic event. Right?
Everybody's path is totally different,
Completely.
And our exhaustion of our behavior patterns are going to look different, and those behavior patterns are going to look different.
Yep.
And I do believe that we are all headed in this direction. It's whatever your timeline is, and I know that I came into this world with what I live now because I felt it for a very long time, but I didn't have anyone to teach me how to use it. And so I was just talking to a Kundalini teacher the other day about like the power. Like I felt very, very powerful as a toddler. I felt really powerful. And that power can go to the light or it can go to the dark.
That's right.
And it went to the dark because so it went and identified with the ego world, and that power was winning, and all of that. And so and now it's now I'm bringing in, it's been in the light for a long time now, and then just letting it build and build and build and keep pulling that energy in. The thing about pain, I would test this out in races. Like when I was feeling a lot of pain, like on the marathon of an Ironman, I would bring all of my awareness. And this is years and years and years of training my mind. My mind now can sit in just being. Sometimes it's busy, but I'm getting more and more of that where my faculty of my mind is on board and my will is on board. And so I can just be. And so I would test this out in races where I would feel extreme pain, let's say in my foot, and I would bring all of my awareness 100% right to my third eye center and move it away from that, and I would not have the pain. And as soon as I would say, okay, now back to the foot. And as soon as I would go back to the foot, the pain would blow up. And so this is the same thing, I think, with our thoughts. If we have a negative thought and we just keep circling around with that negative thought, we're going to create more negativity in our life. If we can move our awareness away, and again, like I don't want anyone to think that they have to stop their thoughts when they sit to meditate, because that's what the mind is, a thinker, it's an analyzer, it's a judger, it's a discerner, it's what it does. We were just never taught how to use it.
Right.
And the training, I believe, is the training of the awareness to where we want it to go. And then what happens in my experience is that the mind says, oh, wait a minute, look at all this awareness over here. I'm not being paid attention to. I'm going to go to where the awareness is. And then the mind starts to become, for the lack of a better word, the servant, as opposed to us being the servant to the mind. And I think that's, you can get into this, you create this gap when you just allow your thoughts to be, but you're pulling that away. So whether I love your visualization of the sky with the clouds, your awareness is on that sky and the clouds, not necessarily on the thoughts. Thoughts are still there, but you're allowing them to move through. And so you're not feeding them. And you're realizing in this gap, because there's a gap between what you're seeing and what you're thinking, in that gap, you see that those are not you. Those thoughts are not you.
They are not you. I mean, you're
That's
so
life transformative right there.
So you've touched on a few things, and so I want to talk about sort of my idea of how I took a theory of pervasive suffering from the Buddhists. The idea being that the pervasive suffering that you create is the feeling about feeling bad about something, or the feeling about feeling something, right? So if I were to just completely go off kilter and start calling you guys names and just acting out and swearing at you, it would be completely out of character for me to do that. And I would feel as though, I might feel your retribution by saying, you've shown me the door, but the feeling about that feeling is where the pervasive suffering occurs, right? And so I've tried testing this in my athletic world, in my athletic life, by just recognizing if I'm doing a hill interval, let's say, like I said, let me give this a try and look at this pervasive suffering where I have a feeling behind the feeling. It's like if I feel bad about feeling bad, well, there I go again, telling these people off for some whatever reason, and it's completely out of character. So I'm on the bike and I'm doing an interval, and all of a sudden I can feel this pain, and I identify that, there's some pain, there's some awareness there. You're still going to feel the legs filling up with lactose and all this good lactic acid and all this good stuff. But you're centering your attention and your awareness just on that feeling behind it, which is, there it is. There's that good old pain again, because I know I'm going up a hill. And I think I've actually learned to kind of push through that a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, I haven't raced yet, so this season yet. So that's the first thing. And then I think you were talking about, you mentioned the self. And so just quickly on the self, the concept that we can move away from the self or the ego seems daunting, but yet it's so simple. It truly is, through mindfulness and meditation, it truly is something that you can transcend. You can transcend the ego. There is no amigo in ego. You can transcend it to a point where you learn compassion and empathy, mindfulness, by just not thinking about yourself. And the idea behind the meditation, as I said earlier, is that if you focus enough just on the awareness of your thoughts coming in and going out with no attachment to them, that's where the self drops out. And so back to the book I was telling you about, Altered Traits, they talk about altered states and altered traits. And I love this analogy. The altered state is what I get when I'm sitting in meditation, a feeling of calmness, of being relaxed, of being aware. However, the altered trait is the important aspect of it. It's where I take that mindfulness off my cushion and into the real world. And so I've been asked, well, what is it that meditation does for you in the most sense? And I think it's just the half-life of what we experience every day. And so the perfect example, you're driving along the interstate and somebody cuts you off, and immediately the bird goes out the window. You're tirade of, right? And so the half-life of doing that is through mindfulness, where you have the ability to be aware that for whatever reason they're rushing to the hospital, or they're just a complete asshole, or there's something else going on that I have no control over, and I have no intention to know. So therefore, I'm just better off just kind of minding my own business, or whatever it might be. And I mean, so the altered state and the altered trait is kind of that dichotomy that they talk about in the book, which I think is really interesting.
The altered traits are, I've been running this mindfulness and meditation group, co-facilitating it we started with a 21-day challenge in November. And then we were like, we can't stop. So we did another 21-day. We started on day 22. Now we just started our next, so some people are on like their 46th day today.
They're probably wondering, well, how did we get into this? What are you doing?
It's so unbelievable what we've been seeing, but we're seeing these altered traits. Yeah. And so we have new people in this group who are now 4 days into meditating, and some of them are having a tough time, and we're like, tell us it all, tell us the bliss, tell us the challenges, tell us the frustrations, so that we can support them through it. And what I keep saying over and over, and I've experienced it, and I'm seeing it through the people who started on day 1 and who are now on day 46, is the altered traits. Yeah. And that the benefits, in my experience, the benefits of meditation, my practice didn't show up first on the pillow. It showed up in the grocery store line.
Right.
It showed up when I got cut off.
Yeah.
It showed up when I was running late to teach a class.
Yeah.
It showed up when, they screwed up my order at a restaurant.
Yeah.
None of that stuff mattered anymore.
Yeah.
And for somebody who always had to win and be in charge and be in control and have the last word, that's a significant life change from sitting on a pillow every day.
Yeah.
Everything in my life started to shift, and I'm seeing that with these folks who have been doing it consistently. And it's amazing. And just in telling the new people, like, don't worry, you sat for 5 minutes and you say it was a nightmare. Awesome. No effort is a waste. Have you read the Bhagavad Gita?
I have not read the Bible. Portions of it.
Dude.
I know.
It's the goods. I was just reading it this morning. I
Yeah.
always have it nearby.
I haven't given it a full matter of attention, but I'm familiar with.
It will come to you.
Yeah.
It will
I go to
now is the
SRF
time.
and I get my little, my Sunday sermon, and I get my little dosage of it a bit. But
it's so good. And but anyway, one of the things, so many bombs of wisdom in there, but no effort on this path is a waste. There's no effort, and I think it's the same thing as an athlete. Like go out and get through those crappy workouts.
Yeah.
They're not a waste.
Yeah,
Even if your watch in data isn't exactly what was prescribed, like just detach from that,
right,
and do the work.
Yeah.
The results will come.
They will come
down the road.
and it's cumulative effect.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You just sit there and do the work.
Yeah.
But I think we're in this mentality now of like, you have the watch and you've got the 60-minute workout and you have to hit these target heart rates and if you don't, that's failure.
Yeah.
And it's not.
I was just having a conversation with someone, a friend of mine, before I came over here, and she was talking about how she goes through the same thing where it's like, it used to be she would go to the gym or go on a run and had to burn X amount of calories or do this or whatever, whatever. There was like an end goal. And that's not necessarily living in the present moment. The time in and of itself is the delusion. There is no past and there is no future. There truly is not. To realize that it's a liberating experience. And so she was talking about this, and the paradigm shift came when she said that no matter what, if I'm just present in the moment and I have the right intention, and I'm a huge believer in just intention and action, the workout becomes better. No matter what happens, if I don't meet the goal, then I still feel okay about myself, and I know that there's always tomorrow. And so I'm deeply interested in how mindfulness can help athletes as it relates to setting goals, and I'm using my air quotes again here. I think that if we operate in a manner of just being simply in the present moment, that the results will come. And I'm looking forward to testing this, and I'm looking forward to talking to more athletes about this too. I've been thinking about podcasting myself and talking about how does it help the athlete to just be in the moment? Do athletes stay in the moment? We talked about this at the beginning of the podcast, where in positive psychology they call it flow, or being in the zone, right? And so the concept being that you're so engrossed in your sport or your work or something that you're not thinking about anything else that's happened in the past or the future. You're simply in the moment. And to be in the moment, through our sport or whatever, you can use that as a blueprint for life. I believe you can. I believe that you can look at things like when you look at the tree, Jess, and you tell me that there's other elements that I potentially may not see. Now I don't know how advanced you are in the 11 dimensions of string theory, and you see things that I don't, and multiverses and all this stuff. We can get into that. We will not get into that, but it's interesting to think about that. It's not just science; it's just awareness. Science can tell us some things, and I'm a sciencey guy. I go to the empirical side of things a lot, and I'm happy to do that. But I also have to take a flyer sometimes and just know that some things are just just the idea of ontology or epistemology is interesting to me, because I can't pinpoint a mathematical equation about consciousness, or I can't pinpoint, science on awareness. I just have to have some trust, maybe some faith, and to be able to sit quietly to you know, kind of build the, you know, that neural correlate in the brain that allows you to do that. I mean, there is interesting science that talks about the relationship between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. And the more we sit in meditation, the less that relationship needs to happen. And so we're not quick to snap judge. We don't live an emotionless life, but we just don't need to have, you know, live in this world of discursive thought or have anger or have aversion. And so
it changes your brain. It has
truly does.
absolutely changed
It
my
truly
brain.
does.
And that's, if we've learned anything from science, is that the brain is plastic. It can mold, and neural pathways can open and others can close.
Right.
And we have 100% control over that
I
as
agree.
individuals. Like,
Yeah.
this is our free will, that we can mold our brains. But again, we were never taught this in school, how to nullify a negative thought pattern. We
Right.
were never taught that.
Yeah.
And so it's people like you and me and BJ and like this a huge mindfulness movement that is now out there creating new teachers.
Yeah.
And those teachers will, because we're all teachers. But I've been thinking about this idea of science, because when I think about everything as energy, to me it feels like it's all science. But because the scientists were studying it from the human mind, we don't have the ability to fully comprehend the science of consciousness.
Yeah.
Because we have limiters.
Right.
Because we live in this ego world.
Right. Well, so here's an example. Like, so if I were to go to like quantum mechanics, I couldn't tell you the first thing about quantum mechanics. I don't profess to understand it. I'm not a mathematical guy. But if you or string theory, if you were to come to me and tell me there's parallel universes, multiverses, and I would say, well, prove it, and you began to show me what a Calabria Yao is, you're looking at me like, are you nuts? You know, well, string theory has defined something smaller than a neuron or smaller than an atom or whatever it might be. And I have to trust your judgment. I have to trust that you know mathematics and you've come to a mathematical equation that can explain string theory. I don't have to be okay with that. I just have to trust that science will tell us certain things about the world. It's not going to tell you anything about how you think about the world. So, you know, it could be, yeah, like you were saying, Jess, you know, it's like you have to, the scientist that's doing the science is a conscious person that's thinking and doing these things, and they're subjected to errors and misperceptions and emotions and all these things too.
Yeah, and so I'm looking something up on my phone. It reminds me of this TED Talk I saw with this, I got to get what he is, but his name is Alexander Tsaris. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. And he is, I just want to get what he is.
Is he a cosmologist?
He is
A physicist?
very smart.
He's very smart.
How smart does that sound? He's
very smart.
He's wicked smart.
Wicked smart.
He's wicked smart.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put the link to the TED Talk in the show notes.
Cool.
Because essentially it's about how life begins, the human life begins.
Yeah.
And basically it takes you all the way up to the point where science can't explain.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And he basically is saying, like, there's something beyond this divine that our human mind, our intellect cannot explain yet.
Right.
But science keeps getting the thing is that science keeps growing.
It does.
And it keeps going up another level. So I love science because number one, it's got our backs as mindfulness people.
Yep.
And because people like their data. And but I keep watching it. I keep watching them discover new planets. I keep watch them discover, like right now there's more light shining on the earth than ever before.
Yep.
The new stars, new chakras. Like there's way more than 7.
Well, think about in cosmology, think about the theory of inflation, that, the universe is continuing to expand, and there is no, I think I heard it best, Tegmark said that the term space is now, the parlance, it's so like old school. It's now, when we think about the universe, we think about it as vast. That there's just literally, and I think about consciousness in this way, and I've actually drawn parallels to my own consciousness as just the theory of it being infinite and vast, and that there is no beginning and no end. And so, when you look up into the night sky, you're looking back as far as light has traveled to us. The idea that there's something beyond it to a point that it ends is probably unlikely. If you had all the money in the world and the largest telescopes, you still can't see past 13 billion years of light that have finally gotten to us. So, you can send Voyager out there and it can continue, and I hope it does. And it's so interesting to think about these things, but it's just like, I think it was like, I was watching a documentary about Voyager, and one of the scientists or one of the people at JPL on the project was talking about taking a drinking straw, and pointing it into the night sky and looking through that drinking straw, just that tiny little hole. You're looking at thousands of galaxies, which contain trillions of stars. So let me say that again. If you look through the drinking straw, that small little point of light, those little cluster of stars, just in that little straw, you're seeing thousands of galaxies that contain trillions of stars. So what does that say when you move the straw away? The idea of that is what equals vast. And that just gives me the chills, just thinking about that.
And I believe it's all consciousness. And so how could we could never measure that.
There's no finite point,
yes.
Right? And so...
But it's all within us.
And so getting back to the important things for the listeners that are probably thinking that we're off on this,
I know. Thank you for bringing it back.
The Neil deGrasse Tyson club of hack cosmologists.
We're getting on the Voyager at 5.
Yeah. But the idea, I think, gets back to, again, how can we dilute this down to something simple? The idea of self is an illusion, and that we have a pure consciousness, and that through mindfulness we can find the gaps in the thought that happen in our meditation that actually it feels like something. And that's the whole theory. Thomas Nagel said, what does it feel like to be a bat? I don't know what it feels like to have if a bat feels some way or has some feeling of consciousness, I can't relate to it, but it still doesn't mean it isn't conscious. And so he wrote this paper about this. And so it's just thinking about that is really interesting, because it's the transcendence of the self and the ego, I think, that are the most important things. When we remove the idea of self, then
separation.
It's just that
we're separate. That you and I are separate.
Yes.
That BJ and I are separate. When I sit in meditation and feel that consciousness, I know I'm feeling the same consciousness that you're feeling.
There's an interconnectivity there.
Yeah.
And that lends itself to compassion, and it lends itself to empathy, and it lends itself to thinking of others. And the more we think about others,
the less we think about ourselves.
How do you think that compassion and empathy, as 3 competitive athletes here in the kitchen, how could compassion and empathy help assist an athlete in their evolution?
Yeah, so it's important so something I was thinking about when we were talking earlier before we started. It's important to make, to kind of create a definition. So compassion being simply an awareness of a thought or a feeling. Empathy is the actual feeling, right? So, there's a philosopher, Paul Bloom, makes an argument that empathy isn't necessarily a good thing. And the reason that he says this is that if you go out and you break your leg on your ride, and I pull up alongside you, BJ, what happened? And you broke my leg. John, I need some empathy. All right, let me get into that empathetic mode and start feeling that. I'm not doing you any good, and I'm not doing myself any good. So this idea of empathy, and I don't want people to think that I'm not raining on empathy, but I'm saying that the difference between it is just a minor tweak of the dial. So that if I'm compassionate, I still have metta. I still can have loving kindness, a feeling of goodwill and good nature, and still be of use to you, as opposed to being empathetic and now I feel this way and now I'm feeling that way and how much better have I become, right? So it's just like it weighs you down. So compassion, I think in sport seems to me, and again, I've got to couch this and say, I don't know enough about psychology, so I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a master meditator, but when I think about meditation as it relates to compassion, loving, and kindness, I think it can transfer into sport in a few different ways. I'm still going to be a fierce competitor. And dare I use the word fierce. I'm still going to have the right intention and the right action. My intention is to win. But I can also be compassionate as an athlete. Before the race, see my competitors as just simply competitors or people like me with the same goal in life. And the Dalai Lama says it best in that, and most contemplative thinkers or Buddhists would say that the goal in life is simply to be happy and free of suffering. I want my competitors to be free of suffering. I don't want my competitors to break a leg or an arm, have a crash, to feel as though they didn't succeed by not winning. If I can feel that, then I think that I'm generating more goodwill, more good nurture and nature into the community of sport.
Absolutely. And you're bringing a higher vibration. To go back to energy, that is a higher vibration. And I think in competitive sports, the ego is alive and well. That's my competitor. That's the person I gotta beat. Like they're separate from me. Or you pull into transition at an Ironman and everybody's got like a great bike and maybe you have a crappy bike and all of a sudden you feel less than.
Now and let me interrupt you for a second and say, so what happens when you get into that race and you said that the ego says that I've got to do that, and what happens when you don't win? What happens when you don't reach that goal? Where does the ego go? Well, it goes to places that we just don't like to be in.
Right.
What if you were to go into it with the intention, with right intention and right action, I'm speaking like a Buddhist, but to go into that with the goal of either to help the team, to win the race, like you have this intention that the outcome should be the best positive thing for you. But I'm not attached to it. Well,
there you go, detachment.
And it's the attachment that
it's huge.
We should all well do. Stephen Hagen wrote in Buddhism Plain and Simple. We should, and I've taken this to my business, which has helped me even more, and I've seen real results from this. But he basically said that we should never lose sight of the intention and the action to do well for ourselves and our family, and what these things give us a good life and what we would define as a good life. But we should also not create an attachment to the expectation or the outcome of what those said intentions and actions might produce. So I don't necessarily have to go into a bike race thinking it's all or nothing, the win at all costs type of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It can be simply that my intention and my action, I've trained, I have the confidence to know that I've done everything that I can do, and I'm going to go into this in that mindset without an attachment to the expectations.
So I have a question for you. I want to get your take on this because I certainly know what my take is. Yeah. What do you say about you got to go in there and you got to be angry and you got to get your motivation from being angry and that's how you're going to win?
I've heard that before, and I just don't like being angry. I just like operating just from a level of this is really fun. I'm thinking about wearing a costume to my first race and just making you laugh. And then tearing it off on the climb and just smashing it, But no, I just don't know that. I don't personally know that. I can't point to a result where anger was my motivation. My best races and my best results have always gone in with the expectation being just simply low. Sometimes I've gone, and this is, pre-mindfulness and a little bit of post-mindfulness. And sometimes I've just gone in with the intention of just having fun and being just in a generally neutral, non-discursive way of thought. I don't want a lot of thoughts swimming around in my head. I want to just focus. I want to get into flow. That's okay. Like, I think getting into that state is a wonderful way to be.
How would you define flow? How would you define that somebody fall into flow?
Being completely consumed with just the action that you're involved in.
That's
with nothing else. There's no, if I'm racing a criterium and I'm doing lap after lap after lap of a downtown city street and I've got 90 minutes of it, my mind might wander from time to time, or look at the puppy dog, or hey, there's an ice cream shop, or it's whizzing by, right? But when we start to kind of get down to the part where this is 5 laps to go or whatever it might be, and this is just a very general, this isn't how I race criteriums, by the way. So anybody that's listening that races against me,
that's a strategy. Now we know.
I'm in flow from the sound of the gun to the end. No, but it's impossible. I would challenge anyone just to sit quietly for a minute and try and just not have any thought. You can't do it. I don't care how much you meditate. And so again, we got back to like, the goal of meditation isn't to just have no thought, it's to be aware, right? So in flow, if I'm doing that said race and it's 5 laps to go, I am now completely engrossed in this bike race. I am now utilizing all of my skill, all of that neuroplasticity that we talked about earlier, the training, the previous racing, those neural correlates and the patterns of my brain in which they're firing, that I know that if I'm going through a corner at 30 miles an hour, I've got to hold my line. I can't be wildly like turning the wheel or, whatever it might be. And if an attack goes up the road, my instincts tell me that I've got to go cover that attack because I've got a sprinter back there that's going to win the bike race. There are a million things that could happen, and there are a million things that could go wrong. I'll give you one fun example. This past September, I went back to the race that I was intending on doing prior to getting hit, the Green Mountain Stage Race in Vermont. A beautiful race, 4-day stage race. Last day is the downtown Burlington Criterium. Awesome race. Technical, 7-corner, through town. My race plan was to get in an early breakaway because I'm more of a breakaway rider than a sprinter. And if that didn't stick, attack on the last lap, because I had some experience in years past where I almost won the race but lost it to someone that had attacked on the last lap. And my fitness was good and I was racing well, and I get better and better as the days go by. That's just like the physiology of me is just that. So I knew that I was going to be good. With 1 lap to go, I put the plan into action. A rider went off the front. I was sitting maybe 5th wheel going through the start-finish line. Get the bell lap card, the counter on the digital clock, 1 to go, 1 lap to go. This is where all it comes into play. So rider goes off. I go with him. We go through the first corner. We go around the second corner. We go up the slight uphill, and he just completely dies, and I drop him. I take the next hill, downhill, through the last corner. I've got the race won. I'm probably at least 10 seconds up the road. I got this little riser, and then I come across start finish line. So I'm like, I can zip up the jacket. I can, point to the sponsors, throw my arms up, all these things. Just as I'm getting to the line about 100 meters before, that lap card still says 1. And immediately I'm like, I made a mistake. I went on the wrong lap. And just as I sit up, I look back, and here comes the field, and whoosh, and they come right through. And it comes down to like a photo finish between first and second, and I get third. And I was on the right lap, but the person that was in charge of changing the card never did. So what does that mean? So I trusted in every single instinct that I had. And I knew that I was on that last lap. But I went off of some other information, not akin to what I normally would do, which is you sprint to the line no matter what, even if you think you're on the wrong lap. It's amazing what the brain will do. Because what was I thinking? I sat up and I'm like, I have to go another lap. Maybe I can get back in. Maybe I can recover. You're not recovering. I was all in. I gave 110% to attack on the last lap. I'm not going to recover from that. And so I ended up getting third. And I was on the right lap. But they made a mistake. And so I don't know.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
What do we get out of that? Just a fun story.
No.
Yeah.
What? There's so much in there.
Yeah.
I think so many riders would have flipped out that was incorrect.
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
How did my mindfulness come through?
Yeah. How did the mindfulness show up?
So there's a video of it, and immediately
of you ripping the card up.
Yeah, totally. yeah, and just
sitting on the guy,
attacking the guy.
There's just so much in there.
Yeah.
You were in flow, and then you got distracted.
Yeah. Remind me to tell you offline about the story behind that, because you guys are gonna flip. When you
can we
hear
put
this.
that on our Patreon extra for our Patreon supporters?
Totally can.
You okay.
Totally can. This will be good.
How'd you deal with that?
There was a video of somebody had the GoPro, and so I immediately I didn't get angry, but I was confused. I turned, and they came through, and I was like, it says 1 to go. You can hear me saying, and I'm pointing, I'm, no-handed, and I'm like, it says 1 to go. You can hear me saying that. And then that was it. I was just like, okay, the next logical thing to do would be to, and I'm a big believer, by the way, in what is the next, whenever you're confused, what is the next right action? So for me, it simply was finding out what had happened. So on the cool down lap, I come back through, I find the chief judge, USA Cycling chief judge. I say, I think we have a problem because that card still says 1 to go. And I was the race leader coming through, and he he's conferring with the person that's on the computer. It's a digital card, and he's on behind the computer, and he's looking, and we didn't turn it. It's clear. You can see it there. You can see it in the video. And his answer was simply that it's the rider's responsibility to know what lap they're on. And it probably didn't sit that well with me. And I said, I get it. But, the brain of a bike racer, we look at what you're telling. I look at the time. I look at the laps. That's there you clearly have that. If that were the case, you'd ring a bell and just hope that everybody would just remember. But you've clearly got a system in place. And I wanted them to uphold the system. And they didn't, of course.
Yeah, but
I didn't spend a lot of time. I was disappointed. Wasn't angry, wasn't mad. I was just disappointed in the fact that I had made the mistake of just not trusting what I knew to be true, which was that I was on the right lap because I attacked. I knew it.
Now, do you feel like that was a different John than a John 15 years ago?
Oh my goodness, a different John 3 years ago. Yeah, and this is a great analogy in that it doesn't take much time, but for 5 minutes a day to just start in your meditation, because the incremental happiness and clarity and mindfulness that you get in just a short period of time. No, I was just, the pre-mindful John would have probably been tossed his helmet down on the ground, kicked the dirt, cussed, just been a selfish, egotistical dick, right?
What was the energy like of teammates and the people that saw it? Because you can totally jump in on all of that,
luckily
right?
I was all the way in Vermont, so I didn't have any teammates. Okay. But I probably would have heard from somebody and said, you did what?
Because that's the challenge too, when the people start and they get on your back and
that's
they're like,
right.
Come on, you got to join in.
Yeah,
you're not upset.
If I were to put myself, put my proverbial self out there and say that there were teammates there and that I was being confronted, I would have to just tell the truth. I did everything that I could. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have sat up. And I think that, and I've told my teammates this, I've told a couple of the guys, and everybody has a story like that. Everybody has missed a transition or, didn't do...
Done an extra lap.
Or gone too soon, Like you go too soon and they're like, you got one more to go. And they're like, no, I don't. Yes, you do.
Yeah. There's an out and back right there. It's like, what?
Yeah. I think just, and so that's a great analogy as to what mindfulness in sport can do, from how we think about ourselves as athletes, how we think about our competitors and the communal group and the combined energy within sport. There's a tremendous amount to be learned in just how we interact with others without even having to say words, just through sport, right? And then how we behave to situations. And so that cognitive side of emotion and what the brain will tell us to do, and because snap judgment just gets us nowhere.
Yeah, and I believe that there may be a misconception that if you meditate, you're going to just go soft, and that's not true at all. You can still be like you said, a fierce competitor, but you're doing it through, and I use this all the time, the right action.
Right intention and right action.
Yeah, right action and right intention.
Have an intention.
And that's such a big one.
Absolutely.
It's huge. Yeah. And what's that next logical step? And yes, maybe you had some emotions, but you were like, okay, what's the next logical step? So it's this self-regulation.
Yeah.
That is actually like, and science has shown that this starts to become more pronounced in our brains as we meditate, is that we have this ability to self-regulate.
Evolutionary psychology, you can't argue with it. I mean, have you ever read any of Richard Dawkins or, some of these people that, Christopher Hitchens, these guys that talk about that we are equipped with emotions for the sole purpose of survival, passing on our genetics, not getting, hit over the head with a rock by another ape. So today, these emotions don't necessarily serve us, but it's part of our genetic code. We are well adapted today. Our brains have grown, the amygdala, produces emotions and effects on our brain and on our minds and on our behavior, but the emotions don't necessarily suit us for as we evolved, right? So there's like this really a lot of interesting theories in just evolutionary psychology that talks about emotion, and that we're not going to be free of it. But the key, again, is to not attach to them. If you attach to them, then you're believing a story that's just simply running through the projector of your mind. It's just like sitting in a movie theater. You're sitting in a movie theater, lost in the movie flow. But if I really am honest, I'm actually sitting in a dark room in an uncomfortable chair with lots of people around me looking at light on the wall. Like looking at your tree and looking at your leaf, like looking at these things. So anyway.
Yeah, there's mindfulness in sport it's blowing up, and we see it, and we've been doing this for a while, and I remember not too long ago when nobody would want to talk to us about it. It'd be like no, like kind of like, oh God, here come the yogi, like just
here they come.
Look the other way.
They're gonna sprinkle fairy dust on us.
Yeah, they saw us.
Yeah. They're gonna make us do yoga.
They're gonna make us, and exactly. There's some like. Extra.
They're gonna make us do yoga.
There's some extra ingredient. That. Yeah, there's some extra ingredient in their water bottle.
They definitely say that they're gonna make us do yoga. I know. I feel like sometimes at the run group I go to, like people don't want to run with me because they think I'm gonna be like talking about yoga. But anyway, then they want to know, like, how did you do that set and you were so calm?
Yeah.
And I say, come to yoga and I'll teach you.
Yeah.
So, oh God, I feel like we could go all night. And I want to know how are things going with Joj Bar, because I know they're over at Endurance House, and like I said, I've been snacking on them like crazy.
Yes, you have.
And you are unbelievable. You just brought us a box, and we are just
grateful.
We know what we're having for dinner tonight. Approximately 930 calories.
Yes.
3 of them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Make them a healthy dessert.
Yeah. What's happening with it?
Jess and I we started the new year off with a lot of energy and a lot of good momentum. Yeah, so there's some big things happening with Joj, I think, and I'd be remiss to talk about it now because I'm a big believer in kind of keeping things close to the chest as a business person, but also just when things aren't necessarily, well, hello, Clark.
Hey, Clark.
How are you?
Hey, buddy. Off, buddy.
So
Off.
He likes Joj Bar.
Yes, he does. He's like, Joj? So things are going wonderfully. I mean, we are really hitting our stride. We're starting to create some brand awareness. We're starting to be specified in a lot of stores, grocery stores, and shops are asking for us. It's a really good feeling, you know. I mean, it's been a lot of hard work, and we're in some transition right now, and so that's some interesting, as kind of from a production side of things, you know. So that's been interesting, where we were able to scale up. We had a successful Kickstarter campaign that we finished out the year. I just can't say enough about just how having a little bit of mindfulness in business can really help, and goes back to the Hagen quote that I talked about, where you just don't attach to expectations, but you just simply, you know, I used to get so hung up in the business world about why aren't they calling me back? Why aren't they accepting what I'm giving them? Don't they know? Who do I think I am? Don't they know who I am? You know, and it never has anything to do with them. It never does. I mean, on the 1% chance that they just don't like the way I look or the way I talk or whatever it might be, then fine. And that's probably not a good relationship. But more often than not, buyers are busy, people are busy, but it doesn't mean that I can't keep emailing you every couple weeks asking for the order until you tell me no. Right? And so there's right intention and having right action. Just do the next right thing. And don't have the attachment to the business side of things where I have to have it or otherwise the house of cards comes down. No, there are a million places we can sell these delicious bars. So I just keep kind of packing the pipeline full of opportunities, and they just start to come as they do.
Yeah, I mean, and that's working with right alongside with universal law. You know, and so we put out that right intention, but then we pull that intention back when we say, well, why aren't they calling me back? Blah, blah. And then we shun it with negativity.
Sure. So the next time they do call you back, then they get this person on the other end that they didn't recall speaking to in the very beginning, because now your attitude has been adjusted. You now feel as though you didn't call me for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Right? So it's that energy. It's just that simple energy, you know? And I like to have an element of compassion in the business world. I know we've got a million competitors out there. People are like, it's such a crowded space. How are you doing it? You know, and it's like, I have compassion for my competitors. I know what we do well. I know what our niche is. I market that to the best of my ability, and when we tell our story, but we're not going to be everything to everyone, right? And I want my competitors to do well, because the more people that are eating bars, the better we all are. There's millions of people. It's like a $10 billion industry. And I'm not foolish to think that like just having a small little sliver of that is just, I could live a good life doing that too.
Yeah. And to be, you know, to not have that mindset about your competitors develops a belief that in lack, like, well, there's not enough to go around. And then now what does that do? Right. So if
creates
everything
fear,
is energy and
anxiety.
Yeah. And so that's exactly where you're going to get back. You're going to get lack back.
Yeah.
But if you keep with that right intention, that just unwavering faith, you keep moving forward. What is that next logical step? Keep it fun. Keep your heart in it.
Yeah.
Remember where it came from. Remember who you're in this with, and the people that you get to connect with from it, and you keep moving forward.
Well, we're going to hire you to write our bio, our corporate ethos. That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Done.
Yes.
Done.
Yeah, but thanks for asking. It's been a great, you know, we're having so much fun, and, you know, Jess is back to racing again. So it'll be fun to, you know, we're going to support her team, and
I saw that.
Some other teams,
Very cool.
you know, and some clubs. And so,
I saw Win
Very cool.
Republic. Win Republic too.
Luke's
company.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to be working with them. We already are, and some of the athletes are starting to tell the tales of training with our bars. And so it's
awesome.
been fun. Yeah.
Really, really cool. I'm so psyched for you guys.
Thank you.
I think you're going to I'm feeling like 2018's like bringing it.
I think so.
Yeah, in a really good way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool.
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here. It was nice to talk with you guys.
So
Yeah.
I feel like we could go all night.
Yes.
Off the rails, baby.
Yes.
Off the rails.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. awesome pod with John. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please check out the show notes for all the details on how to connect with him. We are in deep thanks of your support, you guys. I say it all the time, and I hope you can feel how love-filled this thanks is. So please check out our Patreon page and become a patron. You will get sneak peeks, exclusive yoga practices, and podcast extras like the one we have with John that's going to be going up later this week. Leave a review on Apple Podcast and share how this show is assisting you in making changes in your life. And congrats to Andrea and Chad, winners of 2xU compression run socks. So Andrea and Chad, reach out to us via any of our social outlets or through our website, yogitriathlete.com, with your mailing address, and we'll get those out to you ASAP. We had planned to give away 3 pairs, but can you believe it? Only 2 reviews in January. Now, you guys are awesome. We know you're super busy, and we appreciate every time you choose to tune in. So that's it, my friends. That is it for this week. We've got some more totally kicking episodes in the queue, so stay tuned. But until then, remain awake and ready so that you may continue to crush your goals without indulging energy-sucking vibes like negative thought, self-doubt, fear, or anxiety. We are all worthy of joy. This is our divine right, and we are fired up to have you with us on the path. This warrior path doesn't mean that we won't have intensities or challenges in our life, but the difference between a warrior living awake and ready and the rest of the human population is that we have the tools to choose a way. We have the courage to live at higher vibrations, and we have the bravery to pick up the next breadcrumbs on our path to living the life of our dreams.